things, what it creates is less specialization, more generalization. When you are honed, or when your skills are honed to just do one specific thing, you're able to become highly specialized in that area. And because you're only concentrating in that area, you are likely to be more efficient in that area than somebody that has to account for all these other different things. For example, when you go to the doctor, you may go to a general practitioner first, and they say, you know what, I think there might be something wrong with your heart. But rather than the general practitioner trying to figure out what's wrong with their heart, they send you to a cardio specialist. All right? And that cardiologist can do the test and is able to pinpoint exactly what is wrong with that area of your body. And the reason why is because that cardiologist would have trained specifically in that area. Their skills are specific and concentrated to that area. They don't have to worry about the feet or the head or all those things. They're not like the general practitioner, which is the generalist, knows a lot or knows something about everything but not a lot about anything. They know a lot about one thing, and so they're specialized, and because they're specialized, they're more efficient in terms of their ability to diagnose. They're better at telling you what it is, and they use less resources to do so. So again, specialization, what we call a division of labor and specialization, Adam Smith talked about it. When we separate the firm into these different functions, those functions are better equipped to do those specific tasks. They're more efficient. That's why it's so difficult to write with your feet, because your feet is not specialized to write. Your hands are. Your feet are specialized to walk. And so when we try to do too many things with one thing, we become generalists and we don't have the efficiency. So that's another benefit. And then also, beyond just specialization becoming very skilled, we talked about bulk discounting. When we buy more, when we produce more, we get discounts from bulk purchases. Now, the whole premise of economies of scale is based upon producing a large number of output. The more of one thing that we produce, the more specialized we get at it, the more we spread our fixed costs over the investment to produce it, the more discounts we get because we're buying the same supplies. So it seems, one can imply, or this implies, one could argue, that the more we produce, the more economies of scale we have. But unfortunately, we don't see this actual phenomenon. What we see is this. We see as output increases, unit costs decrease, which is what economies of scale predicts will occur. But at some point in time, we actually see costs starting to rise. These rising costs are called diseconomies of scale. Diseconomies of scale. What are those? Diseconomies of scale, let me go back, are increased costs, unit costs associated with large scale output. Why does these occur? Well, they occur because of what we call increased bureaucracy. What is this increased bureaucracy? Something you might hear this mentioned many times, especially in these days, where people say government is too big. What we're saying is that as we increase the number of people, for example, in an area, in a division, when there are many people, when there's much machinery, what happens is we now need to manage those people. And as we need to manage those people, we have more and more levels of management that occur. So let's say we started a business and we had 2 people working there, right? It's pretty easy, let's say, to manage 2 people. Then we started to get more orders, and we said, you know, we're gonna have to increase our size of our workforce, and we start to get 10 people. It's a little bit harder now to manage 10 people, and let's say we start to get 20 people, and so now we have to have people to manage some of the people, right? And as we have these people coming in to manage, we have more and more layers and levels being added on. And with those layers and levels being added on, the complexity of the organization increases. And as the complexity of the organization increases, so does the cost associated with running the organization. We have managerial costs, we have administrative costs. And those bureaucratic costs, the cost of administration, the cost of managing this now complex organization that is becoming larger and larger because we're producing more and more, may sometimes offset the savings that we get from producing more and more. So I'm going to try to demonstrate this to you, or for you to think about it. Think about two scales, okay? On one side, you have the benefits associated, the cost savings associated with producing more, right? And on the other side of the scale, you have the increasing cost required to manage or to administer this increase in production. As you produce more, the cost of savings associated with managing, or with increasing production, I should say, they increase, but they increase at a decreasing rate. So that side of the scale is going up. The other side of the scale, where the cost associated with managing this larger production is going, I should say, that's actually going. So let me I'm apologize for that. The left side of the scale is that you're managing the organization, and as you produce more and more, the cost savings that you get from that they are increasing, but they're increasing at a decreasing rate. So that's going down. On the other side, you have the cost associated with managing the organization as it gets larger, as you produce more. That's increasing, right? But it's increasing at an increasing rate. So that's going up. That's going up as well. At some point in time, what is down is going to equal to what is up. And at that point in time, beyond that, you're going to have a tipping factor where the cost associated with managing the organization is going to outweigh the cost benefit associated with producing more. I'm just thinking this to myself. The scale example will probably not the best. So let's forget about the scale. Let's just think about it from this perspective. As I produce more, there is a cost benefit, right? There's a cost benefit that comes from economies of scale. But also, as I produce more, my organization gets larger and more complex. I have to spend more money to manage that. At some point in time, the spending to manage the complexity is going to be more than the savings that I get from producing more. At that point in time, I should stop production, because producing more is only going to add more complexity, more spending, and less saving. So at that point in time, with the benefit associated with economies of scale is equal to the increased cost I have to expend in order to manage that complexity, that's the tipping point that we get into this economies of scale. So forget about the first scale. Just think about this. On one side, I get cost benefits from economies of scale. On the other side, I spend more because I have to manage a large organization. At some point in time, it is not going to be worth it to produce more, because the complexity that is created is going to be greater, or the cost associated with managing that complexity is going to be greater than the savings I get from economies of scale. So economies of scale help to promote efficiency, and the reason why is because it reduces the inputs required to produce the same or more outputs. Remember, efficiency is equal to outputs over inputs. As we have or we utilize less inputs, i.e. as the cost goes down, efficiency rises, and if efficiency rises, it allows us to have lower cost structure, which can create value through lower prices. The second element, or the second way to promote efficiency, can be through learning effects. Learning effects are cost savings that come from learning by doing. Many of you, for example, can remember the first, or some of you can remember the first time you rode a bicycle. And when you rode the bicycle, it took you forever. You probably fell down, you probably wobbled, you hurt your knee, you cried, and all those things. The more you rode that bicycle, though, the more the greater level of expertise you learned, the more efficient you became. You could ride faster, you could ride the same distance faster, you learn new innovative ways to ride in terms to make it easier for you. That's what we call a learning effect. And the learning effect, you see, you learn how, by repeating a task over and over and over, you learn how to do it well. For example, reading. I used the example in chapter 3 about reading your textbook, and probably took you 10 hours for the first chapter. The more you did it, though, the faster you became. And learn over time. Management will also become efficient because they learn over time different management techniques to do it better, to do it faster, to do it cheaper. Realization of a learning effect implies a downward shift of the entire cost curve. What does that mean? It means as labor management become more efficient over time at every level of output. As labor management become more efficient over time. So when I've learned to do something, at every level of output, I can do it faster. So example, if I've learned how to speed read, for example, because I've read over and over, I've repeated the task over and over, I can read one page faster than I would have read that page before I learned how to speed read. I can also read 100 pages faster than I would have been able to read 100 pages fast before I learned to speed read. So what it assumes is that the whole cost curve, this is the cost curve here, it has a downward shift. So before, when I was producing an output at level A, this is what it was costing me. As I learned how to produce that and I became more efficient, for the same level of output, let's say A is 20 widgets, before each widget cost $10 because it took me, let's say, 5 hours to produce 20 widgets. And each hour I had to pay $2 of labor. What happens to the cost curve is that, again, for the same 20 widgets, the same output, I am now paying less unit cost. Why? Because I am using less labor. And less labor means less unit cost. Same level of output, but because I can do it faster, my unit cost per production is lower. So let's say again 20 widgets. Each widget would have cost me, let's say, $10 because again it required 5 hours of labor at $2 a piece. Well, here I'm only using 4 hours of labor at $2 a piece per hour. So I use, on the unit cost is $8 per widget, right? The whole cost curve is reduced. Do you understand that? So same output, 20 widgets, and each widget, again, not all the widgets, but each widget at this point costs me $20. Sorry, it costs me $10 because each widget requires 5 hours of labor at $2 a piece. Here, it's still $2 a piece per hour of labor, but I'm only using 8 hours. Sorry, I'm only using 4 hours now of labor. So my unit cost is decreased. Do you get that? With economies of scale, the curve does not go downward, but it shifts, meaning that the more I produce, the lower my unit cost. With a learning effect, I don't have to necessarily I don't necessarily go down the curve. What I do is I drop the entire curve down. I do the same level of output, but I have a lower price, a lower cost per unit, I should say, because I am utilizing less time, less resources. So we have the learning effect. Excuse me. We have economies of scale, and then we also have the experience curve effect. Now, a lot of students get confused with the experience curve and the learning curve. They think, well, hey, it's the same thing. The more experience I get, the cheaper or the less per unit cost as I increase production. That's partially true. The way that you differentiate between the experience curve effect and the learning effect is that the experience curve is actually a combination of the learning effect and economies of scale. So example, the slide says the systematic lowering of the cost structure and consequent unit cost production that occur over the life of a product because of both economies of scale and learning effects. So once down the experience curve, the company is likely to have a significant cost advantage. Why? Because the more I produce, the more I can spread my fixed costs, the more discounts I have, the more specialized I become. That's the economy of scale portion. But the more I produce, the more repetition